Hi, everybody. Welcome to A Mighty Blaze. I'm Jenna Blum, one of the co-founders of The Blaze, and I am here for our Friday Frontliner with one of my favorite authors and people in the whole world, Lorna Landvik. Welcome back to The Blaze, Lorna.
Thank you so much, Jenna. Happy holidays. I'm so happy to be here.
Yes, happy holidays, and they're happier now that you are here. So I'm going to do a little spiel for The Blaze. Those of you who are new to The Blaze, welcome, welcome. We are a team of 35 creative professional volunteers dedicated to linking writers and their readers on a digital platform in the age of COVID, Delta, Omicron, monkeypox, endemic, flu, chickenpox, whatever. And beyond any illness, we just want to link authors and their audiences. If you like what you see here, please give us a like or a follow on Instagram, on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter. We are ubiquitous. And please consider signing up for our newsletter at www.mightyblaze.com. So you'll never have literary FOMO ever again. No more FOMO. Nobody likes that. And if you are a repeat Blaze offender, welcome back. And thank you for always bringing your light to the Blaze. Lorna, you are obviously in the right place here. Like, we're all a bunch of miscreants. It's really good. And now I would love to introduce our special guest, who should need no introduction, but maybe that is just like to me and all her adoring Minnesota fans. We are both Minnesota homegirls representing, by the way. I'm not going to strip it. I'll show you. Just for you. A little tattoo action going on today. Yep, a little UFTA action going on. We will talk about why we say UFTA in Minnesota in a little bit. But first, Lorna, you ready for your official bio?
Oh, my official bio. Let's fire away.
All right, it's from your own website, so hopefully you know what it says.
I am aware of myself a little bit. I have just published my latest book. It's number 13. I'm hoping, 13, lucky. My first novel was published 25, 26, or 27 years ago.
Oh my God.
So exciting.
When you were 12.
Yeah.
And you were like a YA little.
No, that was Patty Jane's House of Curl, my first novel.
Oh, we all love Patty Jane's House of Curl. I tried to curl my hair for you today, but it didn't work. So it's like Patty Jane's sort of weird pseudo curl. I'm loving seeing all these Minnesota people saying, hello, Minnesota in the house, goal. Okay, I'm going to read your bio. Ready?
So I have written such books as Angry Housewives Eating Bonbons, Oh My Stars. I'm also a performer. I'll have a show coming up at the most unique, fabulous venue, I think, in the world. It's called the Bryant Lake Bowl, and it's a vintage bowling alley. Really good restaurant, not just cheese curds. Oh, maybe a little verklempt there. And theater. So, yeah, I will be doing a show in January, and that is such a nice contrast to, as you know, Jenna, the solitude of writing a book. I get to be in front of people with characters who may or may not want to ever appear in the pages of a book, and it gets me out of the house. So.
Right. I was going to say the solitude. I'm going to just do another quick update to your self bio from your website with Lorna's checkered but legal. Past important distinction includes working as a chambermaid in Bavaria, winning a trip to Tahiti as a contestant on a $25,000 pyramid. MacGyver was her partner. I hope you are all teeing up your questions out there. Temping at the Playboy Mansion, it was strictly a, quote, clerical position. We have questions. And walking across the country as a member of the Great Peace March. And as Lorna mentioned, she's acted in many theatrical productions, including half a dozen shows she, quote, conveniently wrote for herself, end quote. And she still lives in the great state of Minnesota. Again, Minnesota representing like raw skull. Like all my mom's side of the family is from rural Minnesota, and I have a house there. And so when you said that necessarily the writing gets you, or the performing gets you out of the house, and the writing is so solitary, what I thought you were going to say is it gets you out of the house in midwinter in Minnesota, which I find very solitary because when I go outside, my eyeballs freeze. So there are like often stretches where it's like 4 days in a row where I don't go outside except to throw a glass of water up on the roof to prove to people on social media that, yes, it freezes before it hits the ground.
If you do go outside with, just washed hair, it will freeze.
And it will break off.
Yeah.
Which I discovered.
No, you don't want that.
Yeah.
And we, as a matter of fact, had our dog in Jenna. I know what a big dog fan you are, and I'm hoping mine doesn't choose to bark during this time together. But we have the most fabulous off-leash dog park at Fort Snelling. So you're in the woods, you're by the Mississippi River, and it's just such a tonic. That was an ET landing. Stop. I'm not going with you. I'm so sorry. I thought
that was amazing. That was amazing. Actually, it reminds me when I used to do readings and my mom was still with us. Often I would forget to turn off my phone and I would tell her, do not call me. I'm doing a reading. And she would call to say, are you at the reading? And her ringtone was a bark, a dog bark. So, at the podium trying to be authorial and be like, woo, 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 woo. Yours is better. This is so fantastic. I want to know first, before we talk about the last circle of love, which can you hold up for us, please? I have it on my iPad. It's a beautiful cover, which obsessed, but can you, this is the last ring light of love, the last circle of love here. And you have, the actual book.
I do.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful. Obsessed with the cover. I want to talk about this. I have so many questions, but first tell us, how cold is it? Let's play that great Minnesota game today. How cold is it where you are and where are you exactly?
It is not very cold today. It was like hovering around 30. And then on my phone, on my little weather app, it says feels like 17 because of the wind, but very, very tolerable. Although the sun has taken a little vacation, and it will for a couple days. And as you know, a sunny, wintry, sparkly day is spectacular. And you can handle, 20 degrees below zero if the sun's out.
Yes, you can with goggles. Absolutely. Love it. Yes. And actually, like 30 degrees after Minnesota winter is like bikini weather. When it gets up over zero, you're like, it's a heat wave. When it gets to 20, you're like, okay. And what are we drinking today?
Well, it's still the afternoon here. So this is just bubbly water disguised as Prosecco.
We'll just pretend it's Prosecco. I was going to tell people there was bourbon in here, but it is coffee. And it's stronger than most church coffee, except for one of the churches in your book.
I just have a question. Can you drink that strong coffee in the afternoon and stay and it won't affect you?
Yes.
It'll affect me.
Yes. I think actually sometimes it has the opposite effect where I drink really strong coffee and then I get tired because it's like my 18th one of the day and it's kind of backwards. But we were talking in the green room about something beloved to us, at least in theory, which is aquavit. So I would love to know everybody's aquavit experiences in the chat. My relatives spoke of it with reverence and fear. And all I know is that it was extremely strong anise tasting liqueur. So one of my missions when I come out to Minnesota for Christmas is to get a big bottle of aquavit and bring it back to Boston. Okay, let's talk about the last circle of love. Please, 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 please. Can you please introduce us to your book for those who might not have read it yet? Tell us in your own words what it is about.
Well, like almost all of my books, the characters came to me unbidden. I didn't know who they were. They are so polite. They always bring their names. And it was a couple of women, and I soon realized they belonged to a church circle. And my mother was a devoted church circle member for years and years. But it was a fun circle. It wasn't all, let's hold hands and, recite the Nicene Creed. They did a lot of fun stuff. My mother played the piano for them. And so then where they were at came into my head, and it's an old scrappy little church called All Souls Lutheran. And it is not doing well financially. The big nearby megachurch, Prince of Peace, has taken a lot of congregants. And they're the last remaining circle, and they want to figure out how can we save our beloved sanctuary. There's a new minister in town. She's a woman in her 30s. So they're brainstorming with her after a very dispiriting meeting, a welcoming and renewing luncheon at Prince of Peace Church that they've been invited to. And they're just bedazzled by that church's wealth. And that church's new in color recipe book. I mean, the pictures are, how can we ever compete? So they eventually decide to write a different kind of recipe book, one that really is their ideas on how to heat up things in the boudoir. They jokingly call it the ABCs of erotica, but it's their version of erotica. And so we, through these characters, through a grandchild and her college friend, through the church custodian who's an atheist, we come to hear their musings on love, romance, attraction, by using different letters. So we do go all the way through the alphabet. Yes, we do.
Love this. It's such a fun concept. And we also get to know things from the point of view of the pastor, who is a chick. She's a chick pastor, even though her name is Pastor Pete.
Pastor Pete. Yep. Her name is Pastor Peterson, but for, casual informality, she asks everyone to call her Pastor Pete.
Right, which raises some eyebrows. So I totally love, I can see this as you're talking, and while I was reading, I could see it as a series. Like there's something about, first of all, I'm addicted to series, but there's something about the competition between the megachurch, which is so glossy and flossy, and like the Martha Stewart church, basically, is how I was thinking of it. And then the All Souls Church, which reminded me of the church that my Lutheran grandmother went to in rural Minnesota, where the coffee, unlike in All Souls, was so weak that you could see the bottom of the cup through a full cup of coffee. Sit in the basement every Friday night and play bingo and have hot dish. Like there's a lot of hot dish in the book. Which I loved, and like everything smells a little mildewy because one of the pipes is broken. Like I feel such affection for this atmosphere and this little church going up against the mega church. How did you come up with this delicious, hot dishalicious concept of them putting together a church cookbook that's based on erotica?
Jenna, as you probably know, sometimes you feel you're in control as a writer and know where you're going, and other times the characters direct the action, and they're the ones. I thought ABCs of erotica, what the? But yeah, that's what we want to do, and so you just sort of follow them, and then the more I write, the more I learn, the more I go back, the more I change things. But my own mother has not been on this astral plane for too long. She died in 2004, and I just was thinking with amusement what she and her circle members would have thought, and I think they probably would have thought, oh, because they were fun women, and it was fun to write about a group of women also who society really has no more time for. I mean, there are Pastor Pete and her good friend Leanne represent a still viable woman to a lot of society. They're attractive, they're in their 30s, but these women are in their 50s, 60s, and the eldest is actually 80, but she's like a Jane Fonda 80, very physical. I love Jane Fonda.
I also love Jane Fonda. I hope she lives to be 140 and she will still look exactly like she does now.
She's fabulous. So yeah, and the older I get, the more I realize, wow, aren't I as appealing to this section of society as I used to be? And it's just so I wanted to write about these women, and that they're still so vital and curious and thinking and want to have fun, and yet they've been through all that life gives them, so they have experience and wisdom backing up their wildness.
I really love this idea. So I kind of am bristling internally, or at least I'm trying to bristle internally and not externally, at the idea that if you're 50 and up, suddenly you're no longer viable. And I was doing this ridiculous contest, not concert, called Fabulous Over 40 a couple of months ago. And my platform was that women have a whole second act of their lives now, that we used to be considered biologically disposable after a certain age and therefore like no longer worthy. But because we live so much longer now and we sort of come into our power when we're not shackled to like the demands of motherhood and like early housekeeping, you suddenly have all of this wonderful time and you get to reinvent yourself. And so I feel as though there is that sort of like, if there is such a thing as like cozy wildness, like I feel like there's a cozy wildness to the women of All Souls. Like they are salty, like they've been around and they've seen some things and they don't want to be completely labeled as as unviable anymore. So I love that you did this. Can you share with our audience, for those who haven't yet read the book, and of course you all should buy The Last Circle of Love, 5 or 6 copies right now from bookshop.org, and my producer will put the link in the chat. Holidays are here. Who does not want like a great church cookbook full of erotica? But tell us a little bit about the content without spoilers, if you will. Like, what is your favorite story, or one of your favorite stories that the women put together for the cookbook?
Oh boy, that's a very good question. I would say, well, I want to talk about a character who's a favorite, and she was a big surprise. One of the one of the church circle members, had a very suave husband who taught her so much. He was a beautiful tailor, and he's now in memory care without a memory. You know, he's severely debilitated by Alzheimer's. And one of his caretakers that Bunny meets is a trans woman, and her story just really heartened me. My publisher had a sensitivity reader read it to make sure that she was believable. She also has a different skin color than I do, and they just wanted to make sure that I wasn't appropriating anything wouldn't be true. And the sensitivity reader said, I totally bought it. The one thing, and this is what I learned, she wouldn't use her male name ever. And it was only referred to twice. And it's called Dead Name. And I didn't know that. So her story really touched me. I was at a book club the other night, and one of the women said what she liked was it's a German college student. He starts getting into it, and he writes, I is for imagination. And I thought, yes, there's a young man who could have said, H is for hookup or whatever, but realizes that in any kind of relationship in life, in your own relationship with yourself, how important imagination is. So I was discovering along with these people what I thought, what Bunny thinks D is for dance, because she was on the tail end of, she meets her husband when she's on an acid trip in college, and he kind of rescues her and her friend. But he teaches, the only dancing she knew was just, right, her head in mosh pits and stuff. And he teaches her how to ballroom dance, and the slinkiness of the dance. So for her, D is for dance. And I do love to dance. But my husband won't dance lessons with me.
That is not cool. Well, you can go take ballroom dancing or whatever dancing, or just go, a group, and they will have partners who will squire you about, and you can throw them around. And
I know I could do that, but I want to tango with him.
Oh, love that. Oh my gosh. All right, Lorna, husband, if you're watching, all Lorna wants is a tango with you. That is so sweet. So who does not want a book about love right now? And especially a book about love at the holidays. So the ABCs of erotica, the ABCs of like the love and romance lessons that these women have learned. For people who might be watching who are not from Minnesota, or who are heathens like me. Like, I was raised by a dad who was a non-practicing Jew and a mom who called herself a recovering Lutheran. So the only religion I ever got was when we go visit my grandma in rural Minnesota, from where I grew up in New Jersey, and she would make us go to church, and then instantly my sister and I would get laughing fits and get pinches, and like that was really like my only experience of church in my life, except to play bingo then with my grandma, and we were both very competitive, very lucky, very good bingo players. And in fact, when she was like 96, we would go play bingo, and she would say bingo, and she wouldn't actually have a bingo. And then she liked to like chalk that up to, maybe she was like really old, but everybody would get really angry at her and be like, oh, Laverne, who does she think she is, raising her hand all the time? Anyway, so can you explain for everybody the power of the church group, the church circle, as like a society, as like a real building block of community and friendship?
Right. And Often readers will tell me what the themes of my books are, and I'll say thank you because I had no idea. Or they'll tell me what you always write about community. Oh, I okay. Um, and I know in my mother's day, when she was a young mother, a lot of them didn't work. They'd get together for coffee. A lot of them had their weekly appointments at the beauty salon. My mother didn't. She had naturally wavy hair. But there were all these places for women to converge and just be themselves. And I think um, church circles provided that for women. And also they were brought together, because they were practicing Lutherans. My pastor, Pete, is always questioning. I grew up with a lot of Lutheran ministers in the family, and I went to Sunday school and church. But I often was just looking out the window, thinking, oh, I want to get out there. But I know how much solace people get. And I was thinking of my mother being in this church circle, especially when my dad died in his early 60s, and they surrounded each other and they boosted each other. And then they also had that commonality of, well, we believe this, we believe in goodness. And so that bolstered them. I came across some something in my mother's papers after she died. And it was right after 9/11. And she was going to conduct the next circle meeting. And she had written a little note to herself, in these terrible times when the world seems to be collapsing, I find this hymn helps me. And she wrote the name of the hymn. And I love when people have things that give them solace and knows for certain this is going to help me. And whereas I would say that I still am a questioner and a wonder.
I love that story, and I think there's room for both the questioners slash wanderers and then the people who feel unshakable in their faith. My grandmother was like that as well. When she was about to pass, she was like, I'm going to go home. I'm going to go see Les. That was my grandfather, Leslie. So she was like, okay with it. She went on All Souls Day, actually. And just like got right up and went up to heaven to do some dancing. They would probably like polka up there. So tell us about one of the things I love so much about your work is I feel like I'm going home to Minnesota whenever I read your books. They transport me there. So tell us about the Minnesota, like, I can't even say the influence in the books, but like the Minnesota-ness of the books. Like, would you ever write a book set in like Russia or like Hawaii?
My next book is set in Russia.
I was hoping you would say this, Lorna. I don't even know. I don't know what that
I
was.
wrote a book set in Hollywood that was my closest autobiographical book. It was about a young woman doing comedy there. And I have written maybe two others that go outside the state lines. But I like Minnesota. Minnesota has a very literate population. We have so many writers. We have so many writers support groups. We have the Loft, which is nationally known, and we have actually a legacy fund that taxpayers like pay $1 every tax year for, and it funds all sorts of art programs, visits to libraries. And I did, when I lived in California, I thought I will never not live in California because I thought California was, wow. It's like, to me, the king of states. It's got everything. But I think Minnesota is like the baroness of states. It's so green and so much water. And it does have a lot of, we have the most Scandinavians in any state. And just because I was raised a Scandinavian, I appreciate their essence. My dad was really funny, but it's always well, come here and I'll tell you the joke. It's not like wah, wah, da. Although it can be. I don't like to compartmentalize, but it's just I love seasons. We just finished a spectacular red and gold fall. I love the winter. I If I get cold, I go inside. Big deal. And I love spring and summer with mosquitoes and mugginess. Yeah. But again, you can go inside.
Right? Some people say that the mosquito is the Minnesota state bird, and I mean by some people, I mean me, because like I have been bitten like through denim in Minnesota by the mosquitoes. But it is like one of the most beautiful places on earth in May, in the fall, in the winter. If you like that sparkling, vast, other planetary snowscape, is fantastic. What is one myth that people often say about Minnesota, like the mosquito state bird, that is actually true?
That our state fair is the best state fair.
Oh, I heard that.
Spectacular. And it is a date, I would say 3/4 of the state's population put on their calendars. We have to go to the state fair. You can see fine art in the fine arts building. There's so much international food, and to see like Malaysian food on a stick is a wonderment. And you can see 4-H kids, pulling in their stubborn cows into the arena. It's just so much fun. So it really is the best one. I know there's a song about it.
Oh, do you want to sing the song?
Well, no, not about the Minnesota State Fair, but from I can't remember the musical. Our state fair is the best state fair. Don't miss it. Don't even be late. I think Anne Margaret was in the movie. Bet dollars to donuts at our state fair is the best state fair in our state.
Thank you. Yay! The crowd is going wild over in the chat. That's so great. Yeah, one of the things I love about the state fair is all the food on a stick. And when I'm in Massachusetts, I tell people about this and they're like, come on, like pickle on a stick. I'm like, yes. Walleye on a stick. What is your favorite food on a stick?
Oh, it changes every year. They did have a deep fried candy bar on a stick. That, even for me, was a little much. We always do get the cheese curds, even though they're not on a stick. We get the mini donuts. It'll come to me tonight, and I'll have to call you in the middle of the night to tell. Oh yeah, that's my favorite food on a stick.
Would you? That would be great. What I remember most about the last state fair I went to, which is indeed spectacular. First of all, they were shooting people on bungee cords up over the heads of the crowd. That was like what was going on that year. And they were mic'd and they were on the radio. So like when you were in your bungee cord being like flung up over, thousands of people, everybody would hear you swearing, in a nice Norwegian, Scandinavian kind of way. But I remember going with my then husband to the all you could drink milk booth. And this is in August. So it's like 900 degrees and 900% humidity. And he was a very enthusiastic Englishman. And he's like, "Oh, look, it's free. It's like milk for a quarter. I'm going to drink all this milk." And so he drank a cow's worth of milk. And then we went on the pirate boat.
Oh,
that's the end of that story. That's all I'm going to say about that. But it was wild.
I don't understand that booth's popularity. It's always so crowded. And it's like, oh, something free. All the milk. Oh, no, not for me.
Not so much for me. No. Okay, so talk to us more about The Last Circle of Love. What is one thing that you would say about this book to people who haven't yet read it? Why must they read this book? What do you love most about it?
I think it'll make you think about what matters to you in love, what attracts you. Why have you chosen this particular person if you're lucky enough to have chosen a person who you're with, and why? One reader told me, yeah, it really made me wonder why I was still married to Bob. And then I came up with it, he's good. S is for shovel. He shovels the driveway every winter. And people talk about, the small gestures that somebody does that tell them that they are loved. And so I think it's a thoughtful book in that regard. I hope it's, people will laugh. That's always my intention. at least in the funny parts. I don't want you to laugh, in a funeral scene or something. But I just like to present life and all of its complexities, but with a light tone. And I think that's what this book does. And it also it's a flag, raised high for women's friendship and how much value we get from our friends. And there's two circle members who are kind of always at odds. They don't appreciate each other. And they really come to, oh yeah, now I see why I can like you. You're not so bad. You should. And the I do, all these mega churches scare me. And especially the politicized ones. And this group of women at this shabby little church, they're so funny. They call to themselves Prince of Peace. They'll call it Price of Peace. Because they don't like how everything, including religion, has been monetized. Although they understand, okay, a church has to have some money so you can repair the roof, and the tiny little stained glass window with the sheep and the lamb that some kid with a BB gun, added extra eyes to. The church needs repair. And then there are a few. There's an agnostic, an atheist. And then, as I said, the church minister is also. She questions her own faith. So I've heard from people that it makes them ponder what they think about life, what they think about the great mystery of life, what they think is beyond life, and their own particular faiths or non-faith.
I love this. I think, first of all, what could be better than a book that has the whole ABCs of small gestures that tell us that we're loved? Because isn't life in like those everyday, like the details? God is in the details. So you should buy Last Circle of Love just for that alone. But also, I think the enduring bond of women's friendship is its own kind of love and really, really durable. In that there's a lot of kind of like sniping and like that might go on, but in the end, like that's where we are. I have a conversation going with my female friends about living together when we're in our 80s. And we're going to have the commune, invite in all the young dancing boys in their 60s. We're all going to have dogs because a lot of them are married, and we think, well, we may be around longer than our husbands. That's what happened with our Norwegian, grandmothers, right? So like, let's just all get together and have a really good time. And I think. I have friends that I've had for 40 years. So that seems like a likely possibility. Do you have a secret? Because you've been married for how many years?
Seems like
forever years.
How long have we? I think 38 years.
That's amazing. Okay, what is your small thing in the alphabet of love? What would you choose as your tip, and then your small way that you're loved?
My husband makes me laugh, and he's always, telling me nice things that I might not even believe about myself. But it is really nice to hear from somebody, wow, you look great, when you think, oh, I need help, and he's like my booster. And it's not in the butt and it doesn't hurt, but he's always at my side, and I hope that he would say the same about me. But I think really to have somebody you can laugh with is primo.
I would totally agree with that. I am at the moment between husbands, but what I really love about the men in my life is that sense of playfulness. Like a day without laughter is a day to me that is wasted. And so if you can basically get up and have an SNL skit with somebody in the kitchen while you're making coffee, like that's a really good day. How did you guys meet?
He crashed my high school dance.
So
he went to a Catholic all-boys school. I went to a public school. So he and his friends, had to seek action somewhere. So my friends, the dance was in a little YMCA building across the street from our high school. And my friend, the Spotlight Soul was the band. They were playing in the basement. My friends come downstairs. Lorna, you got to meet these 3 guys. And we raced upstairs, and there were 3 guys, and they're all still really good friends. They all had long shags. But I liked the tall one right away. I thought, yes, yes. So, and we lived apart for a while. And so, but he says that it was my letters writing to him that always kept him interested. So there's a big shout out to the power of letters, which people aren't a part of anymore. It's so rare that I get a letter in the mailbox. And it means so much. Letters are like little gifts, and they've just been subsumed by, texts or emails. So let's write letters more.
Letters are amazing. So a mutual friend of ours, Nicholas Butler from Wisconsin, who is a phenomenal writer, sent me a galley of his last book to read before we had him on Blaze. And in that galley, like I often will get a card from an author, which is so lovely, or it's inscribed. Nicholas had written me an actual honest to God letter on like notebook paper with pen. And it was something that I sat down and savored like it was a cookie. Because we really don't get or receive letters that much anymore. My first husband was, as I said, a Brit, and we met in college, and then we were separated for a while. And I used to get those airmail envelopes, and I lived for those, and I still have them. Whereas with text or with email, there's so much ephemera. Like you don't always have the tangibility of that love. So I love that this is one of the things that your husband cherished. Our producer, by the way, in the private chat is saying, Liz, my girlfriend and I wrote emails like letters about our wedding for years before we started dating. Yes. Okay. We love this. Well done. So yeah, maybe it's not the form that's as important. I'm sorry, I just totally outed you, Ollie, but like I love that story. Anyway, maybe it's not the form that is as important as the words. And like, but yes, Paravion, that was like a big day to get one of those really translucent blue envelopes. So I think we have a couple of audience questions as well. If we want to throw them up, one of them is from our favorite Blaze girl, Anissa. Hello again. Anissa, are you tired of me yet? You've seen me like 5 times today. Thank God. Hi. Do you start with plot, characters, or setting? Has it been different with your 13 books? Which is a great question. And yes, by the way, congratulations on your 13th book. Obviously lucky.
I always start with characters, and with one exception. And Angry Housewives Eating Bonbons, that inspiration was my many visits to book clubs. And I thought, I want to write a book about these great gatherings. But always a book begins with the appearance of 2 or 3 of the main characters. They come into my head with their names. As I said, they're so polite, and often they will bring the title, which again, thank you, because it gives me guidance. Even though initially I may have no idea about, what's a house of curl? Well, I figured it was an honor. My second book was Your Oasis on Flame Lake. What's an oasis on Flame Lake? And then, oh, that's a nightclub in a guy's basement. Okay, so always characters, and then the plot, as they are, comes. But I never plot things out. I never outline. I never know what's going to happen until I get there.
That's exciting. You're a pantser.
I am a pantser.
Yeah, I am a plotter, but that's simply because I have container store brain and control freak issues, and therefore I need to know what's going to happen. Was there ever a book that you were writing and you're like, never mind, like nothing is happening?
Oh, I've got a couple books. I have one over 250 pages that I just had to set aside, and I always hope that they're percolating, that they're going to, they're going to be brewed, and I'm going to get back to it. But yeah, I've been stuck. I would say I have 7 in progress, and some of those are like 3 pages, but others have, a couple chapters at least.
250 pages. So do most of them actually get repurposed as novels?
Not yet. I hope they will. Um,
So too, we're like every one of us now on this chat is like, we need to see the 250. That basically is like a full length book. Like you could just,
it is, but it's not done yet, and something pivotal has to change. So I will get back to that one because I really do like the main character, and it takes place in a time um, that's very interesting to me. So
will
we'll
you
see.
tell us what that is, or is it gonna?
Well, she runs into a bunch of suffragettes who are trying to, get the vote, and she's it's 1917, 1918, so it's in the midst of World War One too, and the Spanish flu pandemic. So there's just a whole lot going on.
Mhm. You're the second author I've talked to today, actually, who was talking about that time period. And I had been saying earlier, and Nisa, you can take a little nap for like 60 seconds. But my grandmother lived through the First World War in Minnesota and then the pandemic. And I always thought about that. That when she's 14 years old, this happens. When she's, 18 years old, this happens. And how does that shape you? How does that shape your life? So when I, have been complaining about COVID or whatever, I think, well, we have Netflix. Like she was on the farm. There was no Zoom. So, it's the same thing. We have a couple more questions, I know, in the chat. And people, if you have questions, this is the time to ask them because we have about 6 minutes left on the clock. Thank you, Sylvia. Do your close friends see themselves in your works? Great question.
No, and even my mother, when I gave her Patty Jane's House of Curl to read and waited anxiously for her review the next day, as she was reading it, it really made me think, oh, you remind me a lot of the Norwegian mother-in-law. And I told her that. And my mom said, nah, I don't see it. So, no, I never consciously write about any living person. And I'm just sure that everyone I've ever met somehow gets in that stew um, of my subconscious, but not consciously, no.
The Lorna stew. I love it. It's so good. When I had a question about like writing about actual people. Oh, I know what it was. When your characters come to you and they say they come to you, they're polite. I hope they bring hot dish when they come to you. How do they do it? Like, do they come in the middle of the night? Do they come like while you're just, out walking the dog or at like the Fort Snelling Dog Park, which I want to come to, by the way? Like, when do they show up and how do they announce themselves?
It can be any of those things. One of my most vivid memories, I was sitting on my porch rocking, yelling at neighbor kids to get off my lawn. No, I was rocking, and this character named Violet Mathers comes into my head. Oh, okay. And I knew right away that her story was set in the Great Depression and that she suffers a serious accident. Oh, I didn't know what it was, but I kept rocking. And then this man named Shell Headstrom comes into my head. Very handsome, charismatic, pre-Elvis musician. Oh, okay. And I kept rocking. And then Austin came into my head, and he was a very talented Black musician. And I thought, how's his story going to come in this, book where the times were so vicious and everything was segregated? How is he going to be working? Well, I'm going to find out. So um, I don't know why they come or where they come from or why they choose the names they do choose, but I'm just really glad they do.
It's so amazing. And then what do you do? Do you write stuff down immediately? Do you write longhand? Do you put it into laptop? How do you capture these people?
I wrote my first two books all in longhand because I had that old fashioned idea that that's how my thoughts came, through my arm and down my shoulder. But I took typing in ninth grade and I was very fast. And so I thought maybe I should type on a keyboard. And so from then on, I've been typing on a laptop. Well, I had an old boxy computer a long time ago, but um, I won't write down things initially, like if I'm out on a walk and these characters come into my head. I feel like their vividness is vivid enough that I will remember. And yet I have lost some things. Thank you.
I have too. I think that the things that you lose were maybe not meant to stay, and the things that were meant to stay, you will not forget, even if you're in the middle of like a shower in your car in a spaceship
Right.
in Arizona. Like, yes, I think that is the case. If you have one thing that you could say to your adoring readers, what would it be of your 13 books?
I appreciate your readership so much, and my goal as a writer is to write books that I would like to read, books that will bring me into characters' lives and take me out of my own life, and books that I can root for, people feel very badly for them, feel happy for them. I love that escape into a different world. And so I hope you'll join me in that escape in the last circle.
It's such a great escape. Thank you so much for being here to talk to us about the church ladies and the process and love and female friendship and cold. And oh, and you're going to be at Bryant Lake Bowl when? For those of you in Minnesota.
Weekends in January.
Weekends in January, Bryant Lake Bowl in Minneapolis, in Uptown.
Yep.
It's like a really, really great place. You should go. And if I can make it up there, like I've threatened to do this, I know for years, but one of these years you're going to look up and I'm going to actually be in the audience and be like, ooh, like waving my little Minnesota flag for you. Or maybe I'll just do this and like, rip off my shirt and that will be lively. Lorna, thank you so, so much. Everybody, don't forget, can you hold up your beautiful, beautiful book again? I'm going to hold it up on my iPad screen. Don't forget to buy several copies from Bookshop of Last Circle of Love, because who does not want to read about love at the holiday season and beyond? Thank you all so much for joining us today. Stay warm and happy reading. Thank you, Lorna.